As a couple, don't buy property together until you have fully watched this video.
You can't be serious.
What if I told you that that property you bought as Mr. and Mrs. Madiokodomi can simply mean that you have not really bought anything?
That's impossible.
Impossible?
Calm down. Let me explain. Just ensure that you watch this video fully, and then you'll be able to understand what I'm talking about.
This is amazing.
Welcome to L'Education. This is the legal podcast where we break down legal concepts, legal topics, legal principles, break it down to your understanding, and you will be able to understand these legal matters without even going to the law school. Maybe you need to begin to pay tuition fee. Anyway, that's a joke. All right, let's dive into the topic for today. Our topic for today is joint ownership of property. What are the implications under the law? What happens if one partner dies? What can one of these parties who owns the property, can one of them decide to sell the property without the knowledge of the other one? All right, let's go and discuss this one fully. Let's begin with what is joint ownership. Joint ownership is a situation where two or more people jointly maybe pool their resources together and buy a property together. It is absolutely legal to own property together, maybe as a couple, maybe as brothers and sisters, maybe as parents and children, maybe as a cooperative or a company or whatever, or partnership and all. Yes, it is absolutely legal to own property in that manner. But what are the implications of this? Now, where two or more people buy property together, the law presumes that they all have equal right to that property. What that means is that whatever right or liabilities exist on that property, they all have equal share, whether it is right or liability. All right. Now, another very important implication of this is that each of the co-owners cannot single-handedly dispose of the right in that property without the consent of the others. Now, this is what I mean. For instance, the commonest one is where couples buy property. Mr. Jide and Mrs. Kemi got married, and after they got married, they decided to buy property together. Now, can Mr. Jide sell this property without the knowledge of Mrs. Kemi? Oh, he's pressed for money, and he wants to just sell off the property to take care of family affairs, and the wife did not know. Now, this is absolutely not permissible under the law. You cannot, since the property is jointly owned, everything in that property has to be jointly disposed of in the case that you want to dispose of the property.
No.
Very importantly, what happens if one of the partners die? Well, don't bother yourself too much. Now, the implication of the death of one of the partners, one of the co-owners, is that the ownership of that property naturally devolves to the surviving co-owner. Well, we may call that surviving right.
That's absolutely brilliant.
Same example, Mr. Jide and Mrs. Kemi. Now, Mr. Jide dies. Naturally, Mrs. Kemi now fully owns that property. There are situations where the wife also died before the husband. Mrs. Kemi dies, and Mr. Jide is surviving, or is a surviving partner. the property naturally devolves to Mr. Jide. Now, that's different from a situation where Mr. Jide owns the property. When he dies, he now wrote in his will that he is transferring the property to his wife. Those are different. In this current situation, you don't need a will, you don't need any special document to transfer that title. It naturally transfers to the surviving partner. Now, it is very, very important. It is very, very important how the name appears on the document. Really, really matters. Well, marriage is built on trust. So Mrs. Kemi decides that, oh, I trust my husband fully. So even though they pooled money together to buy the property, she decides that let my husband put my husband's name on the property. And so the property or the document of the property carries Mr. Jide as the holder of it. Mrs. Kemi will have great difficulty to stand up later to say that, wow, we jointly own the property. Where when such matters get to court, usually the court will grant the one whose name is on the document the title to that property. Well, there may be other mitigating factor, but generally, as a general rule, that is most likely the decision that the court is going to take.
But I love my wife.
Where a couple jointly owns property and now they are divorced, can each of them sell the property? No. Notwithstanding the fact that they are divorced, they need the consent of each other to be able to dispose of that property. It does not matter whether they have been divorced or not. Since the property is jointly owned by them, both of them have to consent to that sale. Like I mentioned earlier, it matters how the name appears on the document. Now, the common thing is when you want to refer to a couple is to call them Mr. and Mrs. Our friend, maybe their surname is Majokodomi. Mr. Jide Majokodomi, Mrs. Kemi Majokodomi. But while buying property, they bought the property as Mr. and Mrs. Majokodomi. Now, this has implication in law because the law the courts have even held that this kind of description, they are not juridical person in law. They are not regarded as a natural person in law, a person that can sue or be sued in that capacity. Now, I'm trying to break it down in a way that you will understand. There is a case of the Lion of Africa versus Esau, where the court says that this appellation, Mr. and Mrs., is merely for social usage or application.
You must be joking.
And what that means is it does not have legal status under the law. So they cannot own property as Mr. and Mrs. because the courts have held that you cannot sue in that capacity. So if there is an issue and you need to go to court, who exactly will sue? Is it Mr. Jide Majokodomi or Mrs. Kemi Majokodomi that is going to sue in court? If each of them sue, the question is that the name that is contained on the document? And if the answer is no, then you have no local standard to bring that matter in court.
Way out.
So the best way to go about it is to write their names fully, Mr. Jide Majokodomi and Mrs. Kemi Majokodomi. So that depicts that this person and this person actually jointly owns the property. Now, think about it another way. Now, Mr. Jide divorces Mrs. Kemi and then marries another wife. Maybe let's call her name Tokwe.
No?
Mr. Jide and Mrs. Tokwe, they are still Mr. and Mrs. So the question is, if that property is owned as Mr. and Mrs., who among these women is the Mrs. in this matter? So that brings a lot of ambiguity, it brings a lot of questions, it brings a lot of complication.
That's impossible.
Impossible?
So it is best that you fully describe the parties that are jointly owning the property in the document. Now, what is the implication for a buyer? Now, if you are buying a property that is jointly owned by a couple or by more than one person, consult your lawyer to help you in that transaction, to insist that both parties consent to that transaction. Because if both parties do not consent to that transaction, sorry, you may not be buying anything.
What way out?
On the title document that your lawyer is going to prepare, the co-owners, whether they are two, whether they are three, or whatever, must append their signature, must execute it, must sign as a reflection that they consented to that transaction. That is the only time that you can really say that you have bought a property. Well, I know what you are thinking. That what if the other man, Mr. Jide, claims that his wife is dead just to be able to sell off the property? Now, this is one of the things that your lawyer will likely do, is to insist on taking or seeing certain documents, or the other party that wants to sell or claiming the other party has died must show certain evidence. Now, number one is a death certificate of the other person, and then to also depose to an affidavit that that property has now been fully owned by him due to the death of his wife or due to the death of her husband.
That's brilliant!
All right, this is where we stop today. If there are questions around this or our previous videos on land ownership in Nigeria, please drop them in the comment section. We'll be glad to answer them. We'll be glad to respond to you as quickly as possible. Maybe you have questions, general questions about land ownership in Nigeria. Please feel free to drop them, and you can be sure that we are going to attend to them. All right, till we come your way again next week, the same time, please ensure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Ensure that you like and share this to every couple that you know. Share it to all the people around you, and this is also a way to encourage us to do more.
That's brilliant. You're brilliant.
Isadora is brilliant.
Till then, bye.